Robert Adam, a Scottish neoclassical architect, interior designer, and furniture designer. He was the son of William Adam, the country's foremost architect of the time, and trained under him. With his older brother John, Robert took on the family business, which include lucrative works of Board of Ordnance after William's death. In 1754, he left for Rome, spending nearly 5 years on the continent studying architecture under Charles Louis Closeau and Giovanni Battista Piranesi. On his return to Britain, he established a practice in London, where he was joined by his brother James. Here he developed the Adam style and his Europe movement in architecture, based on studies of antiquity and become of the most architect of his time in Scotland, designing and building numerous country houses and public buildings, and often acting as a contractor as well as an architect. Among his best-known works of Hopstown House near Edinburgh and Duff House in Banff, his individual exuberant style built on Palladian style but with Baroque details inspired by Vanbrugh and contemporary architecture. In the 18th century, Adam was considered Scotland's universal architect. However, since the early 20th century, architectural critics have taken more measured view. Colin McWilliam, for instance, finding the quality of his work varied to extreme degree as well as being an architect. Cosmas Damianasam, a German painter and architect during the late Baroque period. Born on Benedict Brienne, he moved to Rome in 1711 to study at the Accademia di San Luca with Carlo Marata. There he could see the fresco accent of Christ by Milazzo da Foli in the Basilica Santi Apostoli. Milazzo's innovative techniques of foreshortening influenced Assam works. In 1713, Assam won the Academy's first prize for his drawing of Miracle of Saint Pio. William Kent, an eminent English architect, landscape architect and furniture designer of the early 18th century. Kent introduced a Palladian style of architecture in England with the Villa of Chiswick House and for originating the natural style of the gardening known as the English landscape garden at Chiswick, Stowe House in Buckinghamshire, and Rosham House in Oxfordshire. As a landscape gardener, he revolutionized a layout of estate Benjamin Henry Bonneville Latrobe, a British neoclassical subject and trained architect in England who emigrated to the new United States and is best known as the designer of the United States Capitol a Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., along with his additional later work on the Old Baltimore Cathedral, the Baltimore Basilica, later renamed the Basilica of the National Shrine of Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. The first Roman Catholic cathedral constructed in the United States was built on a Cathedral Hill, along Cathedral Street, between West Franklin and West Mulberry Street in the future Mount Vernon Belvedere neighborhood, then known as Howard's Woods. A part of the country estates of Belvedere, of American Revolutionary War hero and commander of the famed Maryland Line regiments of Continental Army, Colonel John Eager Howard, who owned and donated much of the land north of Baltimore town. The new Catholic Cathedral site was north of the overlooking city downtown business district and the harbor basin of the Patapsco River. In addition, Latrobe also designed the largest structure in America at the time, the Merchant Exchange, an H-shaped three-story structure between East Lombard, South Gay German, now Redwood, 2nd and Water Streets, would contain offices and wings of the federal government. Numerous maritime business, shift and law firms, along with the same city government offices, before the 1830 purchase of the City Hall building in the Old Pale Museum of Holiday Street, and miscellaneous meeting and classroom. In 1784, Latrobe set off on a grand tour around Europe, visiting Paris when the Pantheon, a church dedicated to Saint Genevieve, was nearly completion. The Pantheon in Paris, designed by Jacques Germans Soufflot and Jean-Baptiste Rondelet, represented an early example of